Hello and welcome to today's screencast. Focus is on the media in sport. So this is part two after we've looked at commercialism. So first thing we're going to have a look at today is the coverage of sport by the media today, and then the key reasons for changes since the 1980s. If you have a look down here, some of these things you might be able to give examples for. We'll certainly have a look at those in a lesson, but our key focus is going to be looking at the things on here that have changed since the 1980s and then give some reasons why they changed. On top of that, we're going to have a look at specifically how the positive and negative effects of media on sport with those three key headings, as always. And then going down to the bottom, we're going to have a look at the relationship between sport and the media with a particular focus on the golden triangle here, as we've kind of looked at throughout the commercialist and the media section of the course so far. So let's have a start then. So first things first, if I put down onto here, coverage of sport by the media today, these are the things. Now you might go down here now, pause the screencast, or in lesson we'll start with it. Could you give some examples of different ways that we view sport in the media at the moment? Okay, that's something for maybe to have a look at if you want to have a quick go, if you can think of sports-based media coverage on there. So let's have a look then. What we're going to look at then are the key changes. So if we look at coverage of sport by the media today, the things it highlighted are specific examples of how media has changed since the 1980s. What we're going to do is have a look at satellite or subscription channels, and then we're going to have a look at pay-per-view, and we're going to have a look at internet. We're going to look at some examples of each and then have a look at what the reasons why they changed since the 1980s. So starting off then, most of us will be familiar that when we watch sport, a lot of us will watch kind of football, netball, women's football, rugby, whatever. We'll watch it on a satellite TV, okay, and via a subscription which we'll pay for to give us access to TV rights for the sports we like. So example of this would be Sky Sports or BT Sports would be fine. On top of that, let's have a quick look at the changes here. The key changes with regard to the introduction of satellite TV and subscription TV is that we now get 24/7 access to sports. Some other key changes that we have alongside this is there is an increased number of female sports on TV, and alongside that we have increased number of female sports presenters on TV. So this change in status of women in the 21st century is seen at its forefront within satellite TV subscription channels such as Sky Sports, BT Sports. Now you might be able to give some examples in here. We'll certainly have a look in the lesson. On top of that, we've also had the developments since the 1980s of media-based sport, looking at pay-per-view TV. Now, you might be able to think of an example now. The one that comes to most people's minds, when you're paying for a one-off event or a sporting event, that is known as pay-per-view. You might have Sky Sports on a subscription where you're paying £50, £60 a month, but they will still offer you a one-off pay-per-view event. So, for example, particularly linked to this, if you have a look at Sky Sports Boxing, you also have BT Boxing, you have DAZN Boxing, loads of different channels where you have to pay one-off fees to watch boxing. For example, big fights such as Anthony Joshua, most recent fight. Well, he's had a number of recent fights, but I'm sure you can pick one from there. On top of that, we go down to here. What are the key changes then? The reason why media companies are able to offer these pay-per-view TV aspects or big Sky Sports boxing shows are because there is an increased demand for big fights, okay? So the bigger fights, and now it's not even so much the bigger fights, there is an increased demand for them. On top of that, the final change that we look down onto here is the internet. The internet has transformed sport, okay, the way that we watch sport. So what I'm going to do is to give you some examples. So an example of how we can watch sport linked to the internet, well, there's two, YouTube and smart TVs. They are two examples of how we can watch sport on the internet. Now, this has transformed many people's way of watching sport, and a couple of examples I'll put into here. So, change one, I'm going to link to smart TVs. If you have a smart TV, that means you can go and watch, if you missed, for example, a football fixture, a netball fixture at 6 o'clock on a Saturday night, you can come home at 10 o'clock and go straight onto an on-demand, which is based around the internet. That on-demand allows you to go and watch that game, so if you don't know the score, it allows you to watch it live, again, well, not live, but a rerun of the live event. On top of that, you can go catch up here as you look very similar. And then you also have something within smart TVs and the internet, such as live pause. So live pause is something where you're watching it. If you want to pause something very quick, you can then go back to it and watch it again after. YouTube gives you the option to watch sport on your phone, which I think is a huge thing. Now, if I look onto here, sometimes as well, if you look at YouTube, you can watch some sports for free. For example, coming up now, very soon, Champions League final and also the Europa League final. final. When they are on, you can watch them free on BT Sports YouTube channel. So that gives you an option to watch some live sports for free. So if I said in here, if you can't be bothered to stay up at night, maybe downstairs watching a game on the sofa, you can get on your phone, go up to bed and watch the game in your bed, or you can, when you're in the car, hopefully not driving, in the passenger seat, you can watch it there. So hopefully you can see how media has developed since the 1980s. This is how we watch sport. These are the three main things that have had huge changes since the 1980s. These are some changes that have took place as you go through. Example changes, that's how we watch sport today. Okay, so what we have to do now then is have a look at the positive and negative effects of the media on sport. So if I start off then, what we're going to look at, sport, we're going to use some examples. We're going to go with the 100 in cricket, as this seems to be a popular topic, as it's a new format, which is media friendly. So what is it then? Okay, what are the positive effects of having a sport such as cricket, a new event such as the 100 on TV? What's going to be good about it? First things first, it increases the profile of sports. For example, cricket's profile without doubt increases due to the 100. On top of that, once we have an increased profile of sports, we also have this idea that the positive effects of the media on sport is that the media encourage sport to adapt their rules and create new formats to increase entertainment. For example, the 100 in cricket is one example. Can I ask you to get down these other ones, though? Sevens in rugby. Rugby is usually played with 15 players. Sevens rugby is an example of something to make the sport a little bit more media-friendly, quicker, more entertaining. And also, when you look at things such as hockey, for example, in order for them to become more media-friendly, they have no offsides. So this means that the game will be faster. This will mean that players can't push up too much. So it will make the game more entertaining for the spectator who's watching it in the media. Other examples, then, of how sport can have a positive effect from the media is there's increased participation in sports. Now, this often links directly to the fact that there's an increased profile of sports. So when a profile of a sport, such as cricket, due to a new event such as the 100, where that happens, often you'll get an increased participation in that sport. So you can add that in there if you want, just say increased participation in cricket as a result of increased profile due to the 100. On top of that, there is also increased entertainment. So when we look at this now, we consider this. So if you imagine the money getting pumped in by the TV companies who are showing the 100 in cricket, what this does is it increases entertainment. Okay, so entertainment, this links to increased standard of play because of the fact that if you're putting more money in, what happens in this, if you want to make an extra note on this as an example, what this means is in the 100 in cricket, what will happen is they will be able to buy expensive high quality players to come into their franchise to play in the tournament. So this will increase the entertainment due to the standard of play rising because of player transfers, if you want to add that in. On top of that, the revenue increases for the sports that have TV or media coverage, okay, and that will then lead that player income will increase. So for example, if you are a foreign star from Australia, from India, and you get asked to come to a franchise to take part in the 100 in cricket, that will mean that because of the money coming in from the media companies, this will mean that there's increased wages for the players who are taking part in the 100. Now that obviously is huge in terms of what what each player can put, but also the sport could then use this to pass down into grassroots, which will increase participation as we looked at on here. Finally, we'll go into here. We'll look at the following. I've put this standard of play increases for sport if it has media coverage because of the money going in, full-time training, etc., better quality of players, player transfers, all that. That's repeated. You don't have to write that again if you don't want to, but I guess it's so important that we cannot forget to put this in. Final positive impact of having media coverage on sport is we now know from the Golden Triangle, as soon as that sport is on the media, e.g. 100 in cricket, they straight away attract sponsors. So suddenly sponsors are thinking, I want to put money into the 100 in cricket because I know it's going to be covered in the media. So example of that for sponsorship will be sponsorship increasing, for example, KP Snacks for the 100 in cricket. So they are our advantages then on sport. Let's have a look at the disadvantages of the media and its impact on showing sport. So what we've got then, I'm going to try and hook these across, so see if we can see how that works. Although we have increased profile of sports, e.g. cricket's profile increased due to the 100, sometimes this is a disadvantage because sports can become reliant on the media, and in particular, the money that the media put in. So they start to rely on that money coming in, but it's usually on a 1, 2 or 3 year contract. On top of that, although we have adapted rules to increase entertainment, for example, the 100 in cricket, this can cause problem with some spectators because this goes against the tradition of the sport and it can put some spectators off. So, for example, in here, if you are someone particularly who likes cricket from a traditional point of view, you would prefer Test cricket. Okay, so Test cricket is a 5-day format that would go against, it was the tradition of sport. 100 in cricket goes against that tradition. Now, on top of that, if we go down to here, we'll now have a look at this. If we say on here, although we have an increased entertainment due to the increased standard of play, exciting formats, what happens is it can change the nature of the sport. So we're looking here, thinking a perfect example really is what we're talking about in cricket. Okay, cricket, as I looked at here, we're looking at this idea. It used to be Test cricket, 5-day cricket, then went down to 4-day cricket with some 1-day cricket. Now we're going down from 2 sets of 20 overs, which is 26 ball overs. Now we're going into 100 balls per team. It can completely change the nature of the sport that was created in the first place by the English public school boys in post-1850 Britain. Okay, going down from there then, if we have a look into here, we now have increased revenue to players, so they will get a player income. Okay, so we said wages for players in the 100. But the problem on that is it can lead to an increased pressure on performers. So if we go from there, obviously that could have potential issues such as taking performance-enhancing drugs, etc. Now going down from here, we also have, down to this last bit here, we've got standard of play increases, sponsorship increases, but some of the disadvantages is that media will control timings for sport. So I'm sure you can pick some examples up of this. Media controls timers. We'll have a look at a little bit more of this on spectators, but particular sport can be dictated to. For example, Premier League football games being played at 8 p.m. on a Sunday, meaning the spectators have to travel all over. But I've just put that in here so we've got a decent framework to answer. Okay, if I said to this point then, although we've got sponsorship from KP Snacks here, what you do get is that the potential that this sponsorship can be removed at any time. So KP Snacks can remove their crisps, their nuts, and the money they're putting in, and that can then leave the sport in a problem because they haven't got the money then to maybe pay the players, to pay the people working at the stadiums, etc. Okay, so we go on to here then. Let's have a look at how this might look for positive and negative effects of media on the performer. So what I'm going to do, we're going to use a concrete example. Okay, so I'm going to ask you in this one, we're going to use one person and we're going to use Cristiano Ronaldo. So I'm going to ask you now, the media, okay, are going to put a lot of money into sport, and as a result of that, this will then lead to performers getting a lot of money. If we imagine Cristiano Ronaldo then, we're going to use similar things to what we use for sport, but we're just going to link it to Cristiano Ronaldo. So there is increased profiles of performers, okay? For example, we've talked about this in year one, global media. Cristiano Ronaldo is the most followed person on Instagram. So if we put that in, he is followed by 564 million people, okay? That is a huge amount. Now, as soon as somebody has that profile on something like Instagram, that means that there will be an increased revenue or income for that performer. Now, that means, for example, Cristiano Ronaldo has a net worth of $500 million. So I've tried to keep this so we keep a constant on 500 plus million followers, 500 million net worth in terms of his income. And then on top of that, once you have someone who has 564 million followers on Instagram, sponsors suddenly become very interested. So they will have increased sponsorship opportunities. So I've said on here, Cristiano Ronaldo and Nike, this is one of his sponsors. They will be throwing money at him because they know he's got such a big media profile on here. Disadvantages then. So there is a media intrusion into people's personal life. Now, Cristiano Ronaldo, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, had extreme media intrusion into his personal life where he was accused of rape. And this is an example of how the media go digging into things with regard to him. I have no idea if that's true or not. Wasn't charged, but that is an example of how the media could intrude into personal life. So I put that in as an example, linking to Cristiano Ronaldo. If I said down to here, our next one, although we have these increased sponsorship opportunities, Cristiano Ronaldo, Nike, the performers such as Cristiano Ronaldo can be exploited by the sponsors, taking up time for training, which is very similar to what we looked at when we looked at commercialism. So I think that will be a nice little overlap from what we did before. And I'll put onto here, e.g. Cristiano Ronaldo's time taken up from Nike adverts that will then take away from his time to train. So they're the 2 key bits or 3 key bits we'll cover in today's screencast. Please make good notes.